Welcome to History Week 2022 with the Museum of Fire. My name is Belinda and I am the CEO here. History Week has become a staple of the museum's annual calendar. It was one of the things that helped us begin rebuilding following the first COVID closure. Our keynote presentation, thanks to its digital format, was a great way that helped to include everybody, especially during the second lockdown, which was last year. For this reason, I'm very pleased to once again be able to offer this year's keynote presentation in a digital format that is available to everyone. The theme of History Week 2022 is hands-on history. As a museum, we have our hands-on history every day, but what does that actually mean? We've tried to give you a look behind the scenes this year and show you what it is that our heritage team actually do. But it is not just our heritage team that have their hands-on history every single day. Our operational team are the ones who ensure that the museum is prepared for visitors every single day, and they're the ones that oversee the daily preservation and protection of our collection. One of our teams who literally do have their hands-on history every day though are our dedicated volunteers, and they're very excited to share with you some of their stories as part of this morning's presentation. We also welcome back SO Ian Grimwood from Lismore Fire Station, and he will be sharing about how firefighters and the community in Lismore are battling to keep their hands on history following the floods that have occurred this year. This is such an important topic as it showcases just how important museums are and why we need to be helping as much as we can to keep our hands on history and make sure that it's preserved for future generations. As many of you know, the museum itself has suffered this year during the flood crisis. Twice we have been evacuated, and while we haven't suffered anywhere near as much as they have in Lismore, we understand just how important it is to maintain our history and to do all we can to help preserve it. We do have a busy morning of digital content today, so if you are watching on our social streams, please keep an eye out as things drop over the next 45 minutes. If you're watching on our website, please continue to keep watching at your leisure. Or if you are here in our theatre, thank you for deciding to join us in the theatre and watch this presentation. Throughout the course of History Week, our entire keynote presentation will be airing in our theatre. So you are more than welcome to come and go as you please during your visit and watch snippets, or hey, watch the whole thing over and over again. I began my museum career as a curator, so preserving history is something that I am incredibly passionate about. One of the most asked questions that we often get here at the museum is, what is our favourite piece of firefighting history? Well, my answer, I love 19th century firefighting history. And the reason I love it so much is because it hasn't been explored very much. And through History Week over the last 2 years, we've been able to explore this topic and we've been able to share a lot of our content with you. So if this is a topic that sounds interesting to you, then head on over to our website and check out the previous 2 years' presentations by myself and other members of the historical community and our own volunteers that have helped to put so much history together. Though I began my career as a museum curator, I am now well and truly in the administrator category. As the museum CEO, I really don't get to have my hands physically on as much history daily as I once did. And there are many more here at the museum that have their hands more firmly on the history than I do, with most of my days filled with meetings, paying bills, corporate discussions, all the wonderful boring things that my staff sometimes forget I get caught up doing, whilst they get to have all the fun playing with history. But for this reason, there are many more people here in our organisation that are better equipped today to talk about having their hands firmly on history. So, without further ado, I would like to pass over to our first presenter this morning. Over to Ian Grimwood, who comes to us once again from Lismore. Thank you, Ian, for your ongoing support. Your participation in History Week annually has become something that I look forward to, and I know many people watching this are very keen to hear what you have to say, and especially given the importance of what has been happening up in Lismore with the flood situation. So, without further ado, over to you, Ian. Thank you.
Good morning. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the people of the Darug Nation, where the Museum of Fire is located, and the people of the Bundjalung Nation, of where I am sitting on land at this time, and their elders past, present and emerging. Welcome to my research room here at home as I prepare my presentation for History Week for the Museum of Fire. And the topic, of course, is hands-on history. I'm going to be talking in relation to the impacts of the flood, major flood we had back in February, March in Lismore and the surrounding areas, and how that impacted the fire station and its historical bits and pieces that we held at the station. All the time while I'm presenting this, we have to also keep in context of the loss of people in the area, the loss of homes, businesses, and the loss of lives. So I'm most respectful about that. So the 2022 flood, as I mentioned, was exceeded everything that we expected, and was the biggest in recorded history in the area. So for months prior to March, there had been consistent rain in the region, which in hindsight set the foundation for a substantial flood to occur. And photo 1 here does indicate that, or illustrate that I should say. This building, Lismore Square, is roughly 1 kilometre from the river, 3-level building with a big car park underneath, and it's fully inundated. They say there was the equivalent of half of Sydney Harbour's water in the region for the flood, so it gives you some kind of idea. So with 2017 still fresh in the memory, that was a major flood, of course. The general feeling was that it would not exceed what had happened in 2017, and obviously we were all very wrong. Photo 2 gives you an indication of this. We have the 74 level here, then the 2022 level up further, and obviously the 2017 level was somewhere in between. It's just a lot of water. It was the first time that the flood water had ever got into the second level of the fire station, and we have this photo here, which gives you a great illustration of that. Obviously, the engine bays and the first level are all fully submerged. So, as I mentioned, there's a bit of confusion as to how bad the predicted flood would be, and this caused some doubts and hesitation as to what actions we really needed to prepare. So, on the Sunday before, the Sunday evening prior to the flood, the fire engine and important operational gear was evacuated up to Gunnellabar, and our focus was on maintaining our capability to respond. That was the priority. And so consequently, with the focus on that, the historical items on the ground floor were overlooked and became inundated, I should say. And so, yeah, that was by daylight, early the next day, I was back on duty. We couldn't get anywhere near the station. It was like this photo illustrates. So we couldn't get in to save anything. So the water receded by the Wednesday, and again I was on duty, so we were able to get in there and start taking down the frames that were still on the walls despite the inundation, and start assessing them and seeing if they could be saved. So photo 4 here was a frame that I salvaged. I was able to save the certificate, the medal and the photo. The rest of it was just a stinking mess, and we were able to, I've been able to get that reframed, and I'm waiting to pick that up once insurance has come through and it's all paid for and done and dusted. So I've got to give a big shout out to the members of the retained brigade that operate out of Lismore. They got the rest of the photos and cleaned them and assessed them, and have since had them reframed, and they're waiting to go back into the station when we eventually do go back in. So the interesting thing was all the black and white photos basically survived pretty well, but the more modern colour prints basically were unsavable. So that the interesting thing in that is obviously the process is far more stable when it's black and white, but the colour photos were just sort of wiped clean. The very fortunate thing there with them is that we have the colour ones digitised, because they're basically crew photographs out the front of the station and taken with a digital camera and held digitally, so we can print them off as required. But the black and white photos that were dated back to the 1940s have survived surprisingly well. So that was a great job. And as mentioned, the retain did a great job. That's what I salvaged after the frame was taken apart. So, and as anyone who's been involved in a flood, you'll know that touching anything is an unpleasant experience due to the stink and the mud and the contamination. So hats off to everyone who's done that work to save things. So obviously within the station there were other items of historical importance to the brigade. Things like trophies won at demos, plaques, just other mementos that all form part of the fabric of the station's history. And I can assure you anything that was able to be saved has been saved. Again, the retained have done a great job there. Things like trophies and that can be cleaned and disinfected and washed and restored. So again, they're sitting ready to go back in when the station is up and running again. So obviously after an event such as this, we look at lessons learned and future planning. And I've come up with a few points that could be of use to people that may be thinking about how to confront such a situation. Like, of course, Sydney and Windsor and all that have had their flood issues too. So a lot of all this is relevant, of course. Prepare a specific contingency plan as to when you're going to make the decision to start securing things and lifting things. As I mentioned in a radio interview during the flood, it's better to be 6 hours early than 30 minutes late, because you'll never get that 30 minutes back. So make decisions early, really important. And if the flood doesn't get as high as you thought it was going to get, well, happy days, and you can just put things back. Compile a manifest of priority items to be secured, so you can triage these items into importance and relevance, so that you know what to go to first and you know where it's going to go, and that way you're going to save the important stuff. Identify a safe location for storage of items until emergency has passed. For us, we'll always remember now the March 2022 flood was far higher than expected. So whatever you think, however high you think it should be, put it higher again, because Mother Nature's the boss in these things, and we can't really do too much to stop what she wants to do. And ensure all members of be it your family or your group that you work with, or your volunteer group, whoever it may be, ensure that everyone's right across your contingency plan and the actions that may be required to be taken. So that's the only way to ensure that things don't get lost. So as I mentioned, this is the station at present. Basically, the front doors have been secured, but we're just waiting to go back in. It is basically the internal part of the station was destroyed, and we're just waiting for that to be repaired, refurbished, and hopefully we'll be back in there sooner rather than later. Probably the last thing is, if I haven't mentioned it, is prepare a updated recent manifest of all goods that you have, that you want to be, that you want a record of, that you want to record what they are, where they are, and any other relevant information that may be attached to that item, and keep that somewhere. Have it backed up on digitally, and just so that if you do lose a paper version, you've got a backup version. But that's all. It's all reasonably obvious, a lot of the stuff. Anyway, that's it for me for today. I hope you got something out of it, and all the best, and keep your hands on history.
Hi everyone, I'm Natasha. I'm the Heritage Manager here at the Museum of Fire. Welcome to History Week 2022. Oral history holds a significant place in heritage conservation. It allows for the recording of multiple voices through history, not just dominant or written records. Oral history may provide a record of personal recollections, the role of the participant, relationships, memories, events, settings, and personal responses. This type of historical account allows for and encourages personal perspective and an opportunity for individuals or communities to share their voice, their narratives, and their meanings. In other words, their first-hand experiences. Such records provide a vast amount of diverse stories and perspectives that can enrich a collection. To commemorate History Week 2022 and the theme of hands-on history, the Museum of Fire is proud to announce that we will be extending our collection through the introduction of an oral history archive. Currently, the museum has a vast array of historical objects related to fire history in Australia. We also have an extensive document and photographic archive, as well as a heritage fleet. These first-hand historical oral accounts will enrich our already extensive collection on firefighting and fire history in Australia through the personal narratives of firefighters and their hands-on experience making firefighting history.
My name is Marcus Baker, and I have the honour of being the Chair of the Board of Directors of the Museum of Fire at Penrith. I'm also a retired firefighter who with Fire and Rescue New South Wales, formerly known as the New South Wales Fire Brigade. I obtained the rank of Chief Superintendent, and my last substantive position was as the Area Commander for Metro East, which encompassed the inner Sydney CBD, the inner west, the northern beaches and the eastern suburbs. It contained 40 fire stations and had over 1,000 firefighters. So, what is history? In my view, history is the study of change through a period of time and covers many aspects of human society, be it social, be it economic, be it political, or be it scientific. History is made possible by people. This year's theme for History Week is hands-on history. I'm briefly going to touch on my service with Fire and Rescue New South Wales, what I witnessed, the change in the organisation over 3 decades, and I'll finish with a brief recap of my most memorable incident that I attended. They say that fire services never change, but I witnessed enormous change in my career. The main field of operation was fire. We wore leather top boots, we carried an axe on our belt, and we wore woolen French cavalry tunics with brass buttons which had to be polished at all times, and we had hardened plastic helmets that could melt and if the situation got hot enough. We didn't have a firefighter at the helm of our organisation. We had a board of fire commissioners that the chief officer reported to. This, however, changed in 1990 when a Director General was appointed, and that replaced the board of fire commissioners and the president. And then again in 1994, the first commissioner was appointed that amalgamated the positions of Director General and Fire Commissioner, Chief Officer, and we finally had a firefighter at the helm of the organisation. Things had massively changed and our field of operation had expanded to rescue, be it flood rescue, be it trench rescue, be it industrial. We had an urban search and rescue capability. We did hazmat, hazardous material response. We did concern for welfare response. We had a fire safety section, and we delivered fire safety to the community. Our equipment had massively changed with technology. We had thermal imaging cameras, we had mobile data terminals, and we had helmets with communications implanted in it. The one thing that didn't change was the culture of the firefighter, from one of being service to the community. It never ceased to amaze me how firefighters approach what they have to do with empathy and compassion at all times. As I said earlier, it's people that make history, and it's certainly the firefighters that made the fire service. When asked about the most memorable incident that I ever attended, I never hesitate in talking about the Roselle explosion. On the 4th of September 2014 in Darling Street, Roselle, a convenience store exploded, destroying 3 buildings and causing fatalities, 2 of which was a mother and her 12-month-old baby. We were there for 4 days, and we endured through crisis management, into consequence management, into investigation, and finally recovery. It was the full gamut of emergency management. The LEMC, the Local Emergency Management Committee, stood up, and police controlled the scene, and we had the ambulance service and the SES in attendance. It was a textbook example of how all the emergency services will work together to serve the community. Probably one of the most touching moments in my career was attending the funeral of the mother and her baby with the first responding crew, the first arriving crew, which was Balmain Fire Station. It was a very sombre occasion for us all.
Hello, I'm Ben. I'm part of the heritage team here at the Museum of Fire, and welcome back. If you're rejoining this presentation, then welcome, or thanks for staying around if we've had your undivided attention this morning. One of the most wanted groups in the museum is our band of merry volunteers, especially those who work on our heritage fleet. The museum's heritage fleet comprises over 80 vehicles, the vast majority that are kept in working order and go on parade regularly, though, if we're honest, fuel prices have caused a big issue for this. Today I have a few of the volunteers from our workshop who are dedicated to keeping their hands on history. Now, we haven't done this before necessarily, and they don't know what questions are going to be asked, so this is going to be a bit of fun. All the volunteers I have with me today have been with the museum over 10 years, and they bring a wealth of experience. I'd also like to thank them for coming into the museum today, which isn't a usual workshop day. So they have taken extra time out for us this week, and in fact, many of you are coming out this weekend as well to assist with an event. So it is a busy week. I'd like to welcome Johnny, Colin, Steve, Rod, Reg, and Richard. All right, so we're talking about having our hands on history, so I'm going to start easy. For each of you, what is your favourite vehicle to work on or drive? I'll start with you, Johnny.
I usually drive one of the benefits. I like driving them. They're pretty good to drive.
Yeah. Is there any particular ones that you've worked on that is a favourite of yours? Or is it still Bedford?
I just like the older vehicles, all the old style vehicles.
How about you, Colin?
It's a very difficult question. I mean, over the last 10 years or so, I've worked on just about every vehicle. But one of the most enjoyable was the big 6 ladders that we've got. That vehicle sat around since the 1970s when it was pulled apart by the fire brigade, and they lost part of the engine. We were lucky enough to get an engine for it, and we had to redo that and get it back on the road again. And while it's a big heavy vehicle to drive, it's been a pleasure getting it back on the road again. So yeah, I think that's probably one of the best vehicles I've worked on. Not the easiest vehicle to drive because it's big and heavy. However, its little brother, the Big 4, is certainly a pleasure to drive, and I enjoy driving that around.
I must admit I don't have a favourite to drive. I think they're all unique and they are all good to drive. As far as working on them, again, they are all unique, they are all different, and sometimes they're a challenge to work on.
Could you tell me about one that has been the most challenging to work on?
I would say thus far it would be the American La France, the V12. Trying to sort out the engine, because it has two lots of head gaskets on it, it's quite unique to work on. And yep, it's currently back on the road. Probably not in 100% order, but as good as what we could keep it going.
Very good. How about you, Rob?
Mainly I drive the Diamond T to events. I did take the CO2 truck into Piedmont, which was quite a challenge, being 42-degree day, and being a closed cab sitting over the top of the motor. It was quite exciting coming home. But no, I really enjoy driving the Diamond T. It's a very, very easy vehicle to drive, and it's very, very good as far as middle of summer, nice and cool, being an open vehicle. And as far as working on vehicles are concerned, I think probably the most challenging one that I have worked on with the fellas is the Aaron's Fox. That was very, very challenging because parts are very, very hard to get for it. And yeah, we spent a lot of time working on that. And yeah, I really enjoy working in the workshop with the fellas. It's a great pastime. So yeah, very good.
How about you, Reg?
Well, they're all special in their own way. I've worked on so many of them, some of them that haven't been going for many years, but I find it very rewarding to get them going. I've got no real favourites, they're all favourites as far as I'm concerned. They've all got their own special little traits and things, and I enjoy driving all of them. Some of them are a bit of a challenge, others are not so much of a challenge, but I just really enjoy preserving their history and you know, putting them in a state that they can be presented to the public. So, yeah.
Wonderful. When driving the fire engines, what makes a fire engine challenging versus those that might be easier to drive?
Some of the older ones have very unusual clutch systems and gear changes and what have you, and anyone that's sort of used to driving a modern car's got no hope. You know, we've got some volunteers from the fire brigade, and it's quite funny to watch them try and start some of the old vehicles. They're used to hopping in a fuel-injected car, hitting the key and away they go. They've got no idea how to start a vehicle with a choke, and one thing or another. It's quite amusing actually. So they're all different. I mean, the older they are, the more unique they are as far as driving that goes. And the driving position in some of them is so damn awkward. You wonder how they ever did it. You know, like they've got handbrakes in the middle of the doors, so you've got to climb over a handbrake to get in and things like this. You know, they're all a bit of a challenge, but yeah, that's what it's all about.
Very good. And how about you, Richard?
I also drive the kids around the place. I'm one of the, there's about 4 different drivers now. And just go and get what's required when they want it.
So Richard, you're one of the drivers in our rides truck here in the museum. Could you tell us a little bit more about that and how you refrain from getting dizzy after driving around the property so often?
Yes, through COVID we couldn't have anybody in the front, but prior to that the kids asked some funny questions, and when they say, how old is this? And I said, 60 years old. They don't seem to understand that the truck is 60 years old type of thing. But yeah, going around doesn't really worry me type of thing. You just say, when's the last lot? When's the last lot? I think the record's about 142 kids which was set last year or the year before. But yeah, it'll be fun. But some of the questions and some are so afraid. Why aren't we wearing seatbelts? Why haven't you got seatbelts? Because we don't go out on the road and we don't go over 10 kilometres an hour. Okay. The kids are quite interesting.
Wonderful. All right, on to our next question, guys. So the museum's vehicle collection dates from steam engines and pumps from the turn of the century to more modern vehicles that are heavily computer-based. How do you adapt your expertise across the eras and decades of the vehicles? Start with you again, Johnny.
Well, if we come in, try and repair, keep them going so people have got something to see in the future. That's basically what we do.
Colin?
Becomes a bit of a challenge. I mean, we're fairly lucky with the group of guys that we've got here. We've got guys who have been driving some of the very early vehicles and understand the challenges involved in driving and repairing some of the very early vehicles. And we've also got some guys here that have driven some of the more modern vehicles. And the difference between the oldest and the newest is so different. I mean, you know, you just can't imagine how these guys went through it, driving some of these earlier vehicles on the roads, you know, back in the 1920s. Most of the vehicles are non-synchro mesh manuals. The gear patterns on these vehicles are so wide and diverse. There's very few that are the same, and it's rather a challenge moving from one vehicle to another. But, you know, given the amount of time that we've been playing with them, it becomes a little easier as we go through it.
Definitely. Would you say that the various expertise backgrounds that you guys come from can help in different situations?
Big time, it does. Not only the backgrounds, but also the age of the volunteers here too. Some of the older ones have actually driven and worked on a lot of the older vehicles, and now they're passing that knowledge down to the younger generation. Well, younger generation, probably me and a few others younger. And that knowledge hopefully will be passed on again by the next generation that comes in here as volunteers. So they can keep all our work and progress moving forward all the time. And the diversity of the people as volunteers here all comes together, and we all solve the problems. If not, there's always Dr. Google.
Always, definitely very helpful.
Yeah, when it comes to the different types of vehicles, not having a heavy vehicle licence, I don't really have a lot to do with the driving of those. I'm very limited to what I can drive here, anything under 5 tonne. But I'm a follower when it comes to all the experts that we have got here. And they ask, I do, and that's what it's really all about. You know? So yeah, and some of the knowledge that we've got here is absolutely unbelievable. You know, it's a pleasure to work with them, like I said before. So.
Rich, do you find the older or the newer vehicles easier to fix up?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, some of the older ones are more simple, but sometimes they're not the easiest to work on. But there again, the newer ones, they're a bit of a problem at times. I mean, I've been around a fair bit. My age has got a bit of an advantage. I've worked on many things over the years. I am a mechanic by trade. I did work on race cars for 25 odd years, so that's sort of a bit of a background. I was in the fire brigade for 25 years. That's also helped. And but I think the biggest thing is the age. I've been around a while. That's probably got something to do with it. But yeah, no, it's some of them are a real challenge. There's no doubt about it. But that's what we enjoy. That's what we're here for.
Wonderful. All right. I think we can be a little misleading by just talking about vehicles, as you all do much more than just work on our fire engines here. Are there any other projects that have kept your hands busy in the museum?
Since starting here at the museum, it is now completely different to what it was in the early times. Most of the walls that you see that have been put up to guide us around through the museum were actually made and installed by the volunteers here, and the challenge involved in that was quite big. We had to keep the museum operating, and we had to build walls out in the workshop and then carry the walls in, stand them up, and then clad them and paint them. A lot of us have never done any welding before, others have had a little dab at it, and we became better at it as we went on. But it's certainly been a challenge to be able to do all of that. We often make little stands. Yeah, make little stands to display the items a little bit better, but the display itself we left to others.
That have got a little bit more flair and foresight and how they want it done. They just tell us what they want, and we do what they put it together for them. Hopefully.
Wonderful. I know that you've assisted with restoration and like preservation works with our Japan exhibit, particularly with the cart and the wheel. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that for me?
Well, a lot of the old timber wheels, the cart wheels, over the years the timber dries out and the spokes in the wheels become fairly loose. And one of the best ways to tighten these spokes up is to soak the wheels in a mixture of linseed oil and turps. And we've had a wheel out there soaking now for a couple of months, and we just keep on turning the wheel, so to speak, every now and then to make sure that we're getting a good coat of linseed all the way around. During this week we actually swapped the wheels over, so the one we've had soaking is now back on the cart again and looking nice and tight, and the other wheel is soaking in the linseed oil ready. So it won't be as bad because it wasn't so loose, but linseed oil will preserve the timber for a lot more to come.
Wonderful. And painting?
Painting is one of the joys of life. Not for us, but there's obviously somebody out there that would enjoy painting. But we've certainly done quite a bit around the place over the years, both inside and out, and even down to painting arrows on the road to try and keep people driving in the one direction.
That doesn't work.
That doesn't work at all.
Very good. All right. Now guys, what advice do you have for anyone thinking about becoming a museum volunteer? Not even just here, but any museum in general. What's key to being a volunteer?
Make sure you've got a sense of humour before you come here. And don't take offence to some of the things that are said. That's about the prime rule, I think.
No, it's very rewarding.
It is.
Terribly rewarding to get an old truck going. It hasn't been going for many years.
And there's plenty of room for your walking trains out in the workshop.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a couple of vehicles there that have been off the road, and some of them 30, 40 years, and to see those vehicles back on the road again, while it was a bit of a challenge, we didn't quite understand how some of these vehicles worked, but it was a lot of challenge and it was a lot of fun to see them back on the road again, and
Very satisfying.
knowing that these vehicles are now in operational condition and are going to be around for people to see and admire a long time into the future.
Anybody else have any key tips for becoming a volunteer?
It is fun.
Just come along, talk to the people, and you'll enjoy yourself. Bit of camaraderie. Good.
How about you, Richard?
Yes. Don't take any offence to what people say. Everybody's got a trade. I'm from the meat industry, so I'm real good around trucks. Like I said, I'm a gopher. I find a lot of stuff in the museum. I take it out to the workshop and say, what's this? And if they don't know, they sit there and they go through the rigmarole of who knows about this vehicle and how old it is, the parts and that. So, yeah, Jeff, you know, come down, meet the team. You don't have to stay if you don't like. If you're nice, we'll give you lunch on Tuesday, free of charge.
Pretty good on the barbecue, mate, I've got to say.
That's all you let me near, that's all. But yeah, come down Friday, you know.
While we've had time with our workshop volunteers today, we also have many other volunteers who work in our museum's collection store and archive. Over 30 of them in total, men and women of all sorts of different background. So, Ask Curator Day is coming up, and on that day we're going to share some of their stories. So keep an eye out on our social media and website for when that comes up. Alright, thank you all for coming in today. Alright, anybody who has any final questions, anything that they would like to ask our volunteers, please write in the comments. You can send us an email. We would love to hear from you, and we can pass it on and we can try and get back to you. So thank you all for coming. We have one final.
For our final presentation on this week's annual History Keynote address, we're going to pay tribute to this year's Life Member inductee. This is the third Life Member to be inducted into the Museum of Fire's new Visitation Membership Program. Our number one member is Mark White. Our second lifetime member was Brian Blunt. And now our third inductee is Mr. John Hand. I've known John for many years, especially when I was working in the role as Heritage Manager. In that position, I worked with John on countless different historical works where he provided a lot of important history for us in regards to firefighter demonstrations, today known as Firefighter Championships. John was the captain of Finley Fire Station since 1975. He's been a key figure down there, and he's been someone that we have appreciated working with over the years. Without his contribution, many of the stories we've been able to provide just wouldn't have been able to come to light. He's helped us out on many blogs. If you head over to our website, you'll find lots on championships, and he was the author behind most of those. So, for 2022, I would like to induct Mr. John Hand as our Life Member for this year. Thank you, John. We all appreciate what you've done for the museum, and we look forward to continuing to work with you over the coming years. Thank you, and thank you all for watching this History Week 2022 presentation.